Man of the hour.
Yeah. All right, good afternoon. I'll start off with a statement on Gaza. The Secretary General strongly condemns the killings of Palestinians today in Israeli strikes that hit Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis in the Gaza Strip. Those killed, in addition to civilians, included medical personnel and journalists. We want to extend our condolences to families and colleagues of those journalists killed, especially those representative of the Associated Press, Reuters and Al Jazeera, who are in this room or online. These latest horrific killings highlight the extreme risks that medical personnel and journalists face as they carry out their vital work amidst this brutal conflict. The Secretary General recalls that civilians, including medical personnel and journalists, must be respected and protected at all times. He calls for a prompt, impartial investigation into these killings. He reiterates that medical personnel and journalists must be able to perform their essential duties without interference, without intimidation, and without harm, and in full accordance with international humanitarian law. The Secretary General reiterates his call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, unfettered humanitarian access across Gaza, and for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages being held in Gaza. We just also, the horrific attack this morning on Nasser Hospital. Turning to the overall situation in the Gaza Strip, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that ongoing airstrikes and hostilities, including attacks on healthcare, are causing further casualties and damaging or destroying critical civilian infrastructure. With famine conditions now confirmed in Gaza Governorate, hunger and malnutrition among children is deepening. Our partners working on nutrition remind us that in any food crisis, children with underlying health conditions are affected first, and without proper nutrition, water, and care, their conditions worsen more quickly. Less aid means more malnutrition. We and our partners continue to call for the unrestricted flow of humanitarian aid into and throughout Gaza. Today, the Ministry of Health in Gaza said that 11 people have died from malnutrition and starvation in the past 24 hours. This brings the total number of people who have died due to malnutrition and hunger to 300. That, again, is according to the Gaza Ministry of Health. Across the Strip, people continue to be displaced while seeking safety and shelter. Our partners tracking population movements in Gaza report that since August 20th, some 5,000 people are estimated to have been displaced from northern Gaza to Deir al-Balah and Khan Younis. Some 8,000 others have been displaced to the west of Gaza City. This brings the total number of new displacements since the end of the ceasefire in mid-March to more than 800,000. Meanwhile, OCHA warns that aid convoys in Gaza continue to face delays, they continue to face movement restrictions, and many other obstacles. Yesterday, out of the 15 humanitarian missions that required coordination, the Israeli authorities facilitated 7, which included the collection of fuel from the Karim Shalom crossing and its distribution to areas where it is needed most. 4 missions had to be either canceled by the organizers or were denied outright by Israeli authorities. The remaining ones were initially approved, but then impeded on the ground and only partially accomplished. Our partners said that several education facilities across the Gaza Strip, all used as shelters for displaced people, were attacked last week. with local authorities announcing that final exams for over 35,000 high school students are due to be held in 2 weeks. We and our partners reiterate our call for the protection of education facilities in accordance with international humanitarian law. Meanwhile, Israeli forces released a World Health Organization colleague who had been detained now for more than a month. Our colleagues at WHO in Geneva obviously welcome the release and called once again for the protection of health staff and all humanitarian workers. OCHA continues to call OCHA continues to call for the protection of civilians, including humanitarians, health workers, and journalists. None should ever be a target. Moving to the situation in southern Lebanon, our peacekeepers there reportedly continued Our peacekeepers there report continued Israeli Defense Forces military activities, including air violations and patrolling in southern Lebanon. Over the last weekend, the peacekeepers found weapons caches, including mortar shells with fuses attached, rocket launchers, and explosives. They also found tunnel locations at 2 locations in Sector West. All of them were referred to the Lebanese Armed Forces as per existing protocol. Just to note that also on Sunday, a UNIFIL patrol faced obstruction by a group of individuals in Sector West. The group briefly stopped the patrol, and the Lebanese army was informed of the situation. We reiterate the critical importance of the mission's unhindered freedom of movement. Any hampering of the crucial work of peacekeepers must stop and is not acceptable. I was asked over the weekend about the reaction to the latest round of escalation between Israel and the Houthis. I can tell you that we know with concern the continued Houthi drone and missile attacks on Israel, as well as the launching of strikes on Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen by the Israeli Defense Forces that took place yesterday. And those attacks reportedly targeted the presidential palace complex as well as energy infrastructure in Sana'a. The Secretary General calls for a cessation of all military activities. Any additional escalation could worsen regional tensions that may further destabilize Yemen and the region and pose grave risks to the already dire humanitarian situation in the country. The Secretary General also emphasizes that international law, including international humanitarian law as applicable, must be respected by all parties at all times. And turning to Sudan, we welcome the recent breakthrough in humanitarian access in South Kordofan State. Yesterday, a UNICEF convoy successfully delivered humanitarian supply in Dilling Town in South Kordofan State, marking the first substantial delivery to this area by any UN agency since October of 2024. The convoy will now continue to Kadugli, the state capital. The supplies will benefit more than 120,000 vulnerable people in Dilling and Kadugli, where humanitarian needs have reached catastrophic levels and communities have been under siege for months. Meanwhile, OCHA also warns that violence continues to escalate in North Darfur State between August 19th and 20th. International Organization for Migration estimates that insecurity forced 1,000 people to flee the famine-stricken Abu Shuk displacement camp on the outskirts of the state capital in El Fasher. Abu Shuk has witnessed several deadly attacks in recent weeks, with reports of abductions of women and young children from sites over recent days. OCHA is also alarmed by reports of a new wave of violence in El Fasher itself, including alleged artillery shelling of the town's main functional hospital. And again, medical infrastructure, medical personnel must always be protected and must never be a target. We're also gravely concerned by the worsening nutrition crisis in Milit in North Darfur. A recent survey by our partners, Relief International, found that 1 in 3 children are acutely malnourished. This places thousands of children under 5 at imminent risk of severe illness, development complications, and death. You may recall this is the same area where 8 convoys from the World Food Program was attacked last week while trying to offload humanitarian supplies. We and our partners remain committed to providing much-needed support to people as access allows, but insecurity, logistical challenges, and severe underfunding continues to hamper our efforts. We once again call on the parties to respect international humanitarian law, ensure safe and unhindered access for humanitarian workers, and prioritize the protection of civilians. And update from Syria, where our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that we and our partners continue to deliver critical aid to Sweda. Today, 11 trucks from the World Food Program reached Sweda, and they carried over 9,000 ready-to-eat food rations. Since the escalation of hostilities in that area in July, WFP has provided emergency food assistance to over 300,000 people across Sweda, Dara, and rural Damascus governorates. Commercial traffic into Sweda remains limited, but 6 commercial trucks managed to enter yesterday. OCHA says that restoring unimpeded commercial access alongside stabilizing the security environment is essential to ensure that assistance reaches the populations effectively and to prevent further deterioration of the humanitarian situation. Also yesterday, our resident humanitarian coordinator for Syria, Adam Abdelmullah, visited Dar governor to assess the humanitarian situation there following the outbreak of violence in that area back in July. He met with families who'd endured difficult years in their homes, but were recently forced to flee. But need for food, water, sanitation, hygiene, and non-food items remains acute. The education sector is particularly overstretched. Many schools have been destroyed. Only a few remain functional, and some are just being used as places to host displaced families. With the school year fast approaching in mid-September, urgent alternatives must be found to protect both children's right to education and families' need for shelter. Mr. Abdelmullah also visited Harak National Hospital in rural Dara, rehabilitated by the local community. Today, it serves both residents and displaced families. He underlined the importance of scaling up support to reinforce such community-driven efforts. And turning to Pakistan, our humanitarian colleagues say that over the last 10 days, the local authorities have said that 400 people have been killed and over 190 injured due to heavy rains and flash floods in various areas of the country. Over 20,000 people remain displaced due to the flooding. Pakistan's meteorological department says new monsoon system is in the forecast, with heavy rainfall expected to continue in the coming days. OCHA reports that people affected by the flooding need shelter supplies, medical assistance, cash for work, hygiene kits, clean drinking water, education, as well as protection support, particularly for women and girls. The authorities are leading the response with the support of the United Nations and other local partners. Over the weekend, Tom Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, released $600,000 from the regional pooled fund to support ongoing efforts. Since the start of 2025 monsoon season on 26 June, Pakistan has faced extensive destruction from heavy rains and floods, with 798 reported fatalities and more than 1,000 injuries. That's what local authorities are telling us. And I just want to read into the record the statement we issued over the weekend in which the Secretary General said that 8 years since the forced mass displacement from Rakhine State, Rohingya people in and outside Myanmar are facing further deterioration in their already dire circumstances. In Rakhine, Rohingya and other civilians are caught in the crossfire between the military and the Arakan army, and they are subjected to forced recruitment, human rights violations, and many other abuses. Continued violence has forced more Rohingyas to flee, including into Bangladesh, which is already generously hosting 1.1 million refugees from Myanmar. Reports of pushback, removals, and deportations across the region raise serious concerns over potential violations of the principle of non-refoulement and the shrinking asylum space. Funding cuts are severely curtailing our education, food assistance, healthcare, livelihood opportunities, and protection services for those refugees. The Secretary General reiterates his call for the protection of all civilians in accordance with applicable obligations under international law. He recalls that during his visit to Cox's Bazar earlier this year, where he witnessed the resilience of the Rohingya communities and stressed the urgent need for strengthened international solidarity and increased support, in parallel to efforts towards a comprehensive political solution that meaningfully includes the Rohingya and addresses their displacement and the root causes of protected services. The Secretary General is hopeful that the September 30th high-level conference on the Rohingya and other minorities that will take place in New York, as mandated by the General Assembly, will draw renewed international attention to the urgency of finding durable solutions. Julie Bishop, his special envoy for Myanmar, continues to engage all stakeholders towards the cessation of violence and a viable Myanmar-led political process to build conditions for conducive, voluntary, safe, and dignified and sustainable return of the Rohingya people to their homes in Myanmar. Edie, and then Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph, and please thank the Secretary General for his strong condemnation of today's attack. This was among the deadliest Israeli strikes hitting both hospitals and journalists during the 22-month war in Gaza. What is the Secretary General's message to the Israeli government as it embarks on a new offensive to take Gaza City?
Stop. We've been very clear in the potential horrors that a new military assault on Gaza City could bring to the Palestinians who have sought safety there. There is no place safe left in Gaza. We want to see a ceasefire, want to see the release of all the hostages. We want to see the humanitarian aid flow back into Gaza so people can start rebuilding their lives, though that statement in itself seems trite in the face of what is going on and what has been going on in Gaza. Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph, and also thanks for the comments by the Secretary General on the colleagues that were killed, or I should say murdered. The Secretary General has called for a prompt and impartial investigation. Unfortunately, we've seen this movie before dozens of times over the past 22 months. There is going to be no prompt and impartial investigation because Israel is the occupying power and they won't allow it. So given that, what can the Secretary General do in his power to do something different this time where there will be accountability?
Look, as we said, accountability in itself takes time. The Secretary General doesn't have the authority to launch an international investigation without a proper legislative mandate. But there will need to be accountability. And we also, again, call on Israel to cooperate with the various mechanisms that exist, that have been set up by various bodies in this organization in order for them to be transparent, right, and to show that there will be accountability. You know, it is a reminder. I mean, I think when it comes to journalists, there was a Security Council resolution, right, 2222, that was passed by the Security Council of this organization, calling for the protection of journalists, calling on journalists to be allowed to do their work, calling on media facilities to be treated as civilian infrastructures and for journalists to be protected as civilians. It is important that this resolution be respected.
I know that the Secretary General doesn't have a mandate to independently send in a protection force to Gaza, but the General Assembly does. Would he support it at this point, given the situation?
The Secretary General will support any initiative that will help bring an end to this conflict, that will help bring humanitarian aid in, that will help see the release of all the hostages, and that will help bring us back to a path to a two-state solution, and regardless of how far away that may be. Yes, ma'am.
This is Minglu from China Daily. Russia has proposed that members of the UN Security Council, including US, China, and Russia, act as the security guarantor for Ukraine. Has the SG or the United Nations taken a position on this proposal?
Well, we know there are discussions ongoing to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. As the Secretary General said, he would support any initiative that would see an end to the conflict in line with international law, in line with relevant UN resolutions, and respecting Ukraine's internationally recognized territorial integrity. Deji, you had a question?
Yes, Steph. Another topic. Today, the Foreign Ministry of Syria announced that Syrian President Bashar will visit here in New York during UNGA. We know that he's still on the list of the terrorists. How would this issue be handled?
I'm sure it will be appropriately issued, appropriately handled by those who need to handle it. But if he comes here, the Secretary General, I have no doubt, will meet with him, as he's met with him before. Okay, any questions in the room, Murad?
Thank you, Stéphane. What are the legal consequences of the famine declaration in Gaza, if there are any, and which entity can or should proceed to seek accountability on this?
Well, there are various legal entities and there are various cases in front of the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, as it relates to the conflict in Gaza, as it relates to what is going on in Gaza. We urge all member states to cooperate with those institutions, which are independent from the Secretary General. For the Secretary General's standpoint, his focus is on supporting the work of those humanitarian agencies, notably World Food Program, UNICEF, FAO, WHO, who are in the lead in trying to deal with the hunger situation in Gaza. Yes, ma'am.
Last week, your office announced the new special envoy for the prevention of genocide.
Yes, ma'am.
But they didn't say when he's starting.
Starting, I believe, in September, but I can double check the date. Yes, Ahmed.
Thank you, Steph. Away from the political and peace and security to housekeeping inside the UN. What's the latest update on the UN at 80 initiative? And there is locomotion in the building, and there is lots of anxiety.
There is locomotion in the building.
And there is anxiety.
I'm not sure what that means, but I like that term.
Okay.
The Secretary General, I think, reported back to member states and to all of you at the end of July where we were. I can tell you from having spoken to the Secretary General this morning, he's very focused on it. We'll be spending a lot of time on moving things forward over the next few weeks before the General Assembly, so that there's more concrete plans to be presented to the General Assembly when it meets.
So that means that any actual steps towards staff reduction is going to be put on the shelf
No. This is a separate thing. The Secretary General will present a revised budget to the Fifth Committee in the coming weeks. There are, as you know, some painful staff reductions. Those have been proposed and will be proposed to the General Assembly, because in the end, member states will have to take those decisions. Deji.
Sorry, one more question. This week, I think Security Council is going to take action on the extension of mandate of UNIFIL.
Sure hope so.
What is the position from the Secretary General? What does he think of the importance of that mandate?
We've always believed that UNIFIL plays a stabilizing role, right? The fact that the men and women of UNIFIL, at the direction of the Secretary General, stayed during the worst part of the conflict, I think is a testament to their bravery and to the critical role that they are now, especially now, being able to play in the implementation of Security Council 1701. I mean, we update you once or twice a week on everything that they're doing in cooperating and working with the Lebanese armed forces and reporting the weapons caches, the tunnels at a pace that I think we haven't seen before, and supporting the LAF in terms of capacity building, even if they continue to face risks, whether it's from crossfire or whether from, as I saw, obstructions from civilians in certain parts of their area of responsibility. But in the end, the decision will be left to the wise members of the Security Council.
But there's a strong preference of the Secretary General to extend the mandate.
I
Would
think
that be correct?
if you concluded that from what I've just spent the last few minutes talking, you would be correct. Abdelhamid, I see your face on my screen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. Yeah, I have a few questions. I want to follow up with Gabriel's question about investigation. And I always wonder, Steph, why UNESCO's director, Andre Azoulay, does not speak loud about investigation. You may say, oh, you could direct your question to UNESCO. I failed. I mean, I couldn't. I couldn't get an answer. I want to ask her through you, why UNESCO is not talking about the murder of so many journalists when it is that in her mandate? Why?
Understanding is that they have in the past and they will continue to speak up for the safety and the protection of journalists. Your second question.
My second question, isn't obvious now that the Israeli plans is to obliterate the Palestinian people as a whole? Does it take so much, thinking that the plans, what Ben Ghafir said recently, it falls into this category. They are trying to kill the Palestinian people as a whole. Why? Is the SG aware of this or not? If he is not,
I think
it's a tragedy.
Abdelhamid, with due respect, I think the Secretary General has been very aware about what's going on in Gaza, has been very clear, and most importantly, has been very consistent in what he has been saying.
Lastly,
Yes, sir.
one short question. Don't you see that you are rewarding Israel when you borrow their lexicon and when there is a land stolen from the Palestinians and they change its name to sound like Hebrew, and then the UN repeats that, like Karim Abisal. It's a Palestinian land stolen from the Palestinian. The Israeli gave them this name, and you are.
I think I have used both Karim Shalom and Karim Abu Salam at different times. Okay, on that note, Barha, go away.
Hello.
Yes, sorry. Oh, sorry. Iftikhar, sorry. I apologize. I only see Abdelhamid on the screen, but if I can hear you, Iftikhar, go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. On the floods in Pakistan and UN coordinating with the Pakistani authorities, I just wanted to know whether UN relief teams are actually on the ground in the affected area.
Sorry, say again.
I said whether the UN teams, relief teams, are actually on the ground in the affected areas.
I will find out from our OCHA colleagues and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, goodbye.